And I always say this to every single one of my patients, clients, and anyone that I know. No one knows you better than yourself. No one. No one. No one. No one knows you better than yourself. I mean, I don't use the word illness or disease for anything, whether it's the flu or cancer. I don't say that it's a disease or illness because there's such negative connotations.
What's happening, peeps? How are we all today?
Feeling fantastic.
Very well, thank you.
I am amazing, but like I said, that's my natural way of being.
I echo that.
Yeah.
I echo that.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we're still feeling amazing after we finish this
In fact,
episode.
how you feeling?
I know, I'm feeling amazing.
You chastised us for not asking you the last time, innit?
Yeah. But I know how you guys are now, so I know that. Yeah, absolutely.
No, it's done out of place of love, really, really.
But yeah, like I was saying, hopefully we're feeling the same once we finish this episode because it's about depression, right?
Quite a heavy topic.
And I hope no one's feeling depressed after this episode is actually finished.
Boy.
So, yeah, depression, guys. Is depression real?
Actually, don't be so rude. Introduce our guest.
You're right. Parisa,
Wow.
how are you?
That's all I have to say. Wow.
I apologize. I apologize. No, but that's a perfect
Just like,
that's a perfect example of taught behavior. This is how they treat me. So
Really?
I apologize for treating you in said way.
yeah, but you're not new.
I'm better than that. I know. But Parisa, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Oh, well, what would you like me to tell them? We've been through this. What do you want me to tell
The
them?
audience haven't know.
The audience don't know you. Who are you? What do you do? Where are you from?
Okay, well, I'm from Australia, but I live here now in the UAE, and I'm a neuroscientist and a psychotherapist, so I do different kinds of therapy, and I look very closely at the brain, and I teach yoga and fitness classes as well.
Nice.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Do everything.
Well, it goes back to what she said this week. You have to ask, and then
Yes.
you shall find out.
Don't
Yes.
ask, you don't get.
Absolutely. But Parisa is going to act as not only just as the professional voice on this panel, being a therapist and a neuroscientist, but also sharing your own anecdotal perspective as to how you look at depression from your own
Absolutely.
anecdotal perspective.
Yes.
So not just professional, also human, Parisa. We've got
Okay,
today.
I will try.
So that's we've got two guests today, guys. But back to the topic at hand, depression.
Yeah.
The question of the day is depression real?
Oh la la.
Very heavy, I know.
Oh la la.
But what's our thoughts? Is depression real?
I feel like the feelings of sadness are. I think we spoke about this before in our own little meetings and conversations. I think the feelings are. I feel like depression is real to a certain extent, right? In that initially it isn't a case of depression, but the more people kind of fall into that whirlwind of sadness and it continues, I think then it falls into a state of depression, i.e. falls into a hole where you can't climb out of, is the only way I can explain it. So for me, I think it is.
The perpetual state of sadness.
That's the definition, yes.
Which acts as, in essence, a segue into feeling depressed, which some people would label as depression.
I think that's a different conversation. I think that the feeling of depressed is, or the definition of depression as we know it, is something that's been so diluted in its meaning because people just throw it around anyway. So I think that's a further conversation to have. But I'd love to, for me, anecdotally, depression is real. I'd love to hear from the rest of you if
I think it's as to who ascribes to it, right? That's my kind of take on it. In terms of like, I feel like if you already think that that's a possibility, in essence, you're already preconditioned to feel in said way. So kind of similar to you, it's real, but in my reality, it's excluded out of consciousness for me.
yeah. The deal?
I don't know if I've even been depressed. I feel like I'm very sad. So I don't really know how to define depression. I just know that I felt really sad.
But do you think it is a real thing as a concept or as a
I think
in
much
general?
like Corey, I think if you believe that it exists, it exists. So I think it doesn't really exist for me. I know that it can exist for other people, but for me, it doesn't exist.
Okay.
What about you, Parisa?
I do think that and I will give you my definition of what it is, and it is a little bit different from the clinical definition, but I do think that there are a series of symptoms that can be grouped together that cause enough of a disruption in your life that we colloquially call depression. So, I mean, I don't use the word illness or disease for anything, whether it's the flu or cancer. I don't say that it's a disease or illness because there's such negative connotations around those words, and it externalizes the amount of impact and control that you have over them. So I like to call them disruptions. So for me, if there is a group of symptoms that fit that general criteria, it's sending me a message that there is a disruption. Same with cancer. Like, it's really just your cells that have gone crazy. They're doing something that's abnormal, but we now call it cancer. So
I love how you're so meticulous with your semantics that you use. Like, I think it's very important.
It's so important. Yeah. If there's one thing I've learned over the years, I've learned how important the definition of words are in communicating, and that I might contextually understand the language, and for me, contextually, some words carry a lot more emotional weight. I mean, it's not that the meaning differs, the application differs. So, and in general, I believe that the way that language and the brain works is so closely linked, that language is coding. Language is coding. So be careful what you're coding yourself with, and be careful what you are being coded with. So language is coding. That's why I'm meticulous, for those two reasons.
I think we should touch on that. Sorry, Adil.
I was going to say, like they say, like words are spells.
Yes,
like spelling.
100%.
Magic.
Yes.
I think we should definitely touch on the coding of language and how we have all systematically fallen into certain frames of thought because of the things that we've been told over and over.
Correct.
From when we were children. But I'll hand back the mantle to you. I'm getting a bit excited now.
No, I love the point you made in it, and it goes back to our succinctness as minds. We use depression as a blanket statement, right?
Yeah.
For any feeling that is lesser than happiness for me. I think it goes back to reference, right? If your reference of life is here, I feel like anything that feels even a little bit lower than that, we coin it as depression. I'm depressed now, because it's so tied to the feeling aspects of it. And I think that's where, like you said, with semantics, we need to be so mindful what spells we're casting when we say that, because in essence that may end up being a self-fulfilling prophecy for you. And if you say it, in essence, like they say, the speech is the image of mind, right? You've already ascribed to that thought process because you've said it. That means it's already here. And I that's where I believe everything starts from.
Yeah.
If you think of the word on its own, a depression or depressed is just something that is lower and pushed down.
Yeah.
So on its own, it's accurate.
Yeah.
What you're saying, that if you are used to having this kind of level of energy and happiness, and then you recognize that it has dropped, it's an accurate description. There is a depression. It has depressed.
Yeah.
At what point does it go from being something that is in the regular range of human experience, because it's always up and down, that's how homeostasis is achieved, to then being something that is taking over your life in a negative way? What was the point?
And that goes also to like your mindset, what your thought processes are, how
Yes.
you see the world, how you speak your world,
Yes.
and all of that goes into that.
Of course.
So like you're saying, it's your reference point.
So at what point then, semantically then, right? Because these words exist, right? We don't make them up.
No.
Right? So at what point semantically do we transition from sadness then to depression?
What is the...
Okay, so if the only tools for diagnosis is language, right? If you don't go and do an MRI, if you don't go and do blood tests, if you don't go and check your different endocrine systems, if you don't do that and you're just speaking, there are several markers that you can say as symptoms for that crossover from just feeling depressed or recognizing some sadness to then something that is taking over your life.
Okay.
The markers usually are, first it's grief, sadness, and sometimes it can be feeling overwhelmed, and if you're someone that usually doesn't spend a lot of time crying, suddenly there's lots of crying. So, and remember that everything I'm saying is that it could be.
Yeah.
It can be. Every brain is different and every person is different. So anything that comes out of my mouth, don't really listen to. 100%, because it's a could be. These are all could be. So that's one of the could be's. The other could be is that it could be that you no longer derive pleasure from the things that regularly give humans pleasure. One of them is food, sex, activities that give the body reward system to motivate you to do it again, dopamine. Okay, so you imagine you're taking a bite of your favorite apple or your favorite chocolate bar, and it either makes you sad, or you feel nothing. There's just a flatness. Okay, that's another marker. Another one that's not usually talked about much is confabulation. Confabulation is kind of like a story made up. And you see this a lot with patients that have had memory loss, and also people that have age onset dementia. So, grandma will be sitting in the car, all of a sudden you say, "What are you doing here?" And she'll have some kind of elaborate story. "Oh, I'm just here because I'm going to go to the grocery store to buy you some cake that she doesn't have a driver's license and hasn't had one for a long time, but in that moment her brain recognizes there's a gap and it quickly fills it. And we see that sometimes as a marker with people that have depression, that they but it's a self-depreciating story. So everything that they're going through, it's not accurate, it's a lie, but they're not doing it to lie, it's just how they view it at that time. Self-depreciating confabulation is a negative story that they think is real. That's another one. Another one is sleep is disrupted. So extreme fatigue, no energy to get up and go and do anything, but simultaneously not being able to sleep. So there is usually in the average functioning at a homeostatic level, you have a cortisol spike in the morning and it lasts you the day. This is flipped. So they have a cortisol spike at night, then their sleep is disrupted, they suddenly wake up and they cannot go back to sleep. So it's just general disruption of the major things that you need in life to function as a normal person.
That sounds like some of my sleep patterns, to be fair.
So now that we have these
exactly, which is in isolation, you can't say, but when it's grouped.
Okay,
So-
it's a coupling of those things that make it.
Yeah, they're not in isolation.
Have you guys experienced any of these things grouped together?
I wouldn't say so. No.
No, there's been times, and this is why I say that I believe that depression is a thing, right?
And then it has to be over time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, because there's been sustained periods of time where I felt myself decreasing or being in that depressive state over a period of time, and it gets deeper and deeper and deeper until a point where I recluse, I cut everyone off, I just want to sit in my house, close the curtains. I don't look, I being vulnerable right now, I've been in some very dark places.
Yeah.
I've had some things that have almost resulted in very tragic results, if you want to call it that. I've been in some very dark places, so I find it difficult to the anecdote that Corey uses of, your mind state has to be there. The fact of the matter is, at any given time, I would class myself as one of the strongest people I know. One, because I've been through a lot of stuff, and two, because every time I've been through it, I've seemingly bounced back. Now, I can attribute that to my faith, to my partner, to my wife, to my family. I can attribute it to a few things, but the simple fact that I've bounced back tells me that I'm strong. However, my mindset is so strong that when I do drop, it goes the polar opposite, right? I go from being this super strong, super resilient, super tough person to now being, okay, well, I'm beating myself up with the same rod that I've created. Does that make sense?
No, I get that.
So it's polarizing, but yeah, it's one or the other for me. There isn't the middle ground is how I operate on an everyday basis, but is that a middle ground though? That's, for me, that's me being on the strength side.
Your strength almost becomes inverse.
This is it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how it feels at the times when I've been like that. I'm not like that now, but there have been times. I've never been clinically diagnosed, but I recognize that there have been moments in my life where I've spiraled so far that it could have been a very bad situation.
How long did that period of time exist for you? Because when all the things that Parisa said, I wasn't aware of the combination of all of those things and how that creates
And
a
there's
depressed
others,
state.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there is, but there must be a time element also, or maybe there isn't. But just for you, anecdotally, Manny, how long was that period of time for you? Was it like weeks? Was it months?
It ranges because it hasn't been once. I would say it's been maybe at least twice, maybe 3 times in my life, and it ranges, right? Because now you're not dealing with your concept of time is somewhat eroded because everything just seems like muddled together. You kind of lose the days. So afterwards, when you think about it, you realize, okay, well, the first time maybe lasted a few weeks, right? It's never in a day and then it's gone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's a culmination of different things that start happening, like the lack of sleep, like the overactive mind, like the not eating, like your normal daily routine is totally disrupted. Right? But in that moment, you don't recognize it. In that moment, it's like, okay, what the heck's happening? Why is this day happening? But it's literally like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month, 3 months sometimes. You see what I'm saying?
So to some degree, it's kind of inquantifiable to that.
In that moment,
in that degree, because you kind of go through this segue of series of symptoms, right, of depression, and then one day you wake up and you're kind of there, and then it kind of begins. The journey sort of begins from there, right?
Maybe it isn't only until like you've looked at it from hindsight that you can really see that maybe was depression, unless you were clinically diagnosed. I think now, listening to what you said, I feel like since I've been in Dubai, I've been depressed. You know, like it's tough.
Yeah, and I see that a lot. People.
I think Dubai also, as a place, as a city, kind of takes away your ability to recognize depression, because everything's happening. There's so much noise, and it's telling you need to be out there, you need to be at the brunches, sleeping with this person, that person. You need to. It's all. No, let's be honest. But the vibe of Dubai kind of takes away. I mean, it takes away your moment of introspection, so to speak, right? So you're always on the go. That you never pause to think, how do I actually feel?
Does that kind of act as a coping mechanism then, we think, right? In terms of all of the noise and being in Dubai, right, where there's so much to do. A lot of people might be feeling depressed or actually going through depression, not clinically, but kind of finding themselves at brunches,
It's a placebo.
You could still be going through it clinically and still be
Functioning.
Okay.
Because
But that's what I'm saying. It's a placebo. The Dubai thing is a placebo because it numbs you, right? Which is what I'm saying. You don't get the moment to stop and think. It's still there.
It's not just Dubai. That's how cities are designed, and in general, they are not very healthy places from an organism's point of view. The things that we need to keep us in balance are altered or removed. You need nature, you need sunlight, you need quality interaction, not quantity of interaction. So these are the things that keep us in balance: quality food, quality sleep, nature. And these things in most cities are either altered, removed, or
there's an influx of poisonous things there.
Correct. That's right. That disrupt that, which I hope we get to talk about, because these things can cause depression. So when we talk about depression, I feel like I want you all to think about it differently. Think about it as if it was just a disruption, and you don't notice it until it's knocked you off your feet. But there's, like you said, Manny, there's little mark, like you're not sleeping properly, that's a disruption. You're not eating properly, that's a disruption. You feel disconnected, that's a disruption. And then stack them all on top, and you have something that you don't understand why it's happening. You kind of do, and then you don't know what to do about it. So
having that self-awareness is so key, right?
Yes, 100%.
What's your take then, Parisa, on going to see a doctor?
I think that it is ridiculous to not know your own body to a degree. okay? I'm not saying we all need to go and become neuroscientists or endocrinologists or ear, nose and throat specialists. No. And I'm not saying that people don't have information, but it's much easier to be taken advantage of if you have no idea. You know, when you take your car to the mechanic, you can't see what they're doing, you don't know what they've done, and you might not understand it anyway. So you have no power of what is being said to you that they've done, that is wrong with it. You don't know. The same thing is happening with our bodies. And I always say this to every single one of my patients and clients and anyone that I know. No one knows you better than yourself. No one. No one. No one. No one knows you better than yourself. You just need to educate yourself on how the systems work. So that if you are going to the doctor, I'm not saying don't go to the doctor, but just be aware that all professions, not just in the medical field, but all professions, they are salespeople. I'm a salesperson because this is what I believe is right, okay? So I'm going to keep telling you the same stuff that I know about. If you go to a physiotherapist, they're going to tell you that you need to do X, Y, and Z because that's what they know. It's not a malicious thing. That's just how it is. Somewhere in between there, it's only you that needs to go between all of those things and figure out what is causing this pain.
Yeah.
What is causing your cancer? What is causing your pain? If you have pain in the body, you're not just going to go and just take a bunch of medication for generalized pain. It's either external, it's happened in your knee because you got kicked playing soccer, or it's an internal thing, it's in your abdominal. You will find out the cause before you go and treat it.
Yep.
But somehow, for some reason, we treat the mind and the brain as outside of the body. Why are you feeling like that? Why are you not sleeping? Why are you feeling depressed? Where is it from your thyroid? People, 20% of people that have thyroid problems have, or is it the other way around? 20% of people that have depression have problems with their thyroid. Okay, 20%. It's a huge proportion of the population that their thyroid is in a hypo. It's not producing enough hormone, so they are not sleeping properly and they are not eating properly. This is causing their depression.
Which hormone is
Wow.
that?
Thyroxine in the thyroid gland.
Wow.
I like speaking to Parisa because
I'm angry.
I feel like sometimes she reaffirms a lot of the biases in the way I think.
Yeah.
It's always nice to speak to people that reaffirm your biases.
apart from when she calls football soccer.
Sorry.
Oh yeah,
She made me
It's
flinch.
Australian.
that's a big issue.
Sorry.
I actually like bringing in science to it.
100%.
It takes away any kind of opinion,
100%.
you know, and we can
And
throw
science is still not a real thing either.
some, also science is only science. Science is only science until it's disproved,
Correct.
right? So that's, it's only truth for now.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So for now,
Yeah,
we have a truth.
that's right.
It goes back to
If you choose to subscribe.
Yeah, exactly. It goes back to my bias. The bias I take is the argument of authority, right? I.e., that person's a doctor, that person's a therapist, that person's a coach. So everything they say, I must take for gospel. And like I said, you've got to be your own therapist.
Yep.
You've got
Yes.
to be your own coach. You've got to
Yes.
be your own PT.
Yes.
And then you can make a formed decision.
Correct.
And it's a lot easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there's a plethora of information out there. So where do we follow? Do you know what I mean? But that's something I personally ascribe to. Hence why I'm not just one of those people that kind of lays down when it says, "Oh, this person said it, and this person is this
Yeah.
person, so it must be true," right?
But I think that goes back to what I was saying at the beginning: is how we've been trained, how we've been brought up, because it starts in the house.
Yes.
Then it goes to school,
Yeah.
and then it goes. So everything we're taught from when we're children is
indoctrination.
is indoctrination. We're framed a certain way. Like if I look at like your household was, and I know this because I've had a lot of conversation. Your household was conducive to debate, and so if you didn't believe something,
You can have a conversation.
have a
about it.
conversation about it and try and dispel the myths.
Yeah.
So
Just
so
the
to speak.
simple discipline of how many times have you heard this? Because I said so. Have you
Yeah.
heard parents say that?
Yeah.
They're saying, do this or do that, and the kid doesn't want to do it. Why? Because I said so.
And then school.
Like, this child needs to know why. Because later in life, People are going to tell them to do things, and they're not going to stop and ask, why am I doing this? They're just going to do it.
Yeah.
It's just, well, because you can't be bothered taking the time to explain to your kid why
Or you
we're
don't
doing
know.
this,
sometimes
or you don't know.
That's it. Sometimes they don't know.
Find out.
Yeah.
There's a study in the book The Outliers that looks at some of the most successful